Well, hey, welcome into the next episode of C3 Podcast. We're excited. Got Tom Calton with us today. Um, for those of you who don't know Tom Calton very well, he's one of the most spirit-filled men I know. Loves God. He's chasing after his heart all the time, and he really brings that into leadership. One of the most spirit-filled leaders I've been around, and it's really awesome seeing him lead in both business and ministry. But Tom, I'm gonna let you just take a couple of minutes and just kind of describe to people who you are and just kind of the way that you bring who you are into, your business and the ministries that you're a part of and that you lead.
Sure, thanks. And I'm really honored to be on this type of broadcast. I really appreciate the opportunity to share some stuff that has been building what God's been working in my heart for several years. And still, as you say, I think it's a really good description, Josh, to think about like chasing after it, that it's always there's more to discover and there's more to grasp a hold of. So I was brought up in a very godly family, very church-oriented family, and got involved in the student ministry, kind of at the relatively earliest opportunity there. So kind of had my feet wet in leading young hearts kind of fairly early. By the time I was 18, was involved in that, kind of engaged as an established ministry at a church, a local church. Then went on to actually aviation for a little while, and then I was getting so much of my heart fulfillment in student ministry, I just decided to move on from there into like full-time studies and stuff like that. So I went to Gardner-Webb, got my all the way up to my master's there, and enjoyed that time. But all throughout that time, I was either in my family's business, my dad's business, or I was in some type of chaplaincy for about 5 years in there. I was involved in some type of chaplaincy. So, it was kind of a bit of a dual track, going on some of those, but primarily the majority of my career life has been spent in some type of business, small business, being either co-owner or even, of course, just a great opportunity to learn all kinds of stuff as whether it be the gopher or the guy that was helping actually manage a portion of those businesses. And it's what I've seen develop is this unique opportunity for business owners and business leaders to have an expression. It's a hybrid, that's kind of been a buzzword, I guess, in the past years of, hey, my car is a hybrid, or even my, whatever, my crossbow might be a hybrid, or these things where you're taking the strengths of one discipline and the strengths of another discipline and kind of merging them together for the greatest strengths. Even in animal husbandry, whenever you've got the genetics of like a pure genetic line and another pure genetic line, and you cross those two lines, the first generation, I think it's called first generation vitality, that there's something about when you take a pure, Black Angus, and you take a pure Charolais and you put those two bloodlines together, their first generation has this amazing level of vitality, and you call that a hybrid maybe. And then whenever you have, when you're taking like a pure solid desire for good business leadership, and you take a pure solid desire for good ministry and good ministry leadership and mission, and there's something that happens when you allow those two to cross-pollinate. And I think I've seen a lot of ministry leaders kind of take that in a good direction, like Craig Groeschel, one of my favorite mentors, I guess, along those lines as a pastor. and a business owner that he has created the Groeschel Leadership Podcast, and it's just stunning. I mean, what these leaders are doing. Andy Stanley is another great example of that. Like, here's the leaders of like massive waves of church movements, but they understand that there is a phenomenal amount of cross-pollination that goes on. When you become a better leader, a more inspired leader, you're able to lead your ministry better. Or if you become an inspired business leader, you're able to lead ministry better. Inspired ministry leader, you're able to lead business better. So that's kind of an essence of what I would like to, honestly, part of this journey here in this conversation is me wanting to air out a little bit, and to, even have the benefit of talking it out a little bit further, because I feel like I'm learning in this every day.
Yeah. Tom, like one thing that I've learned personally, and I've seen in church culture, because, you name Craig Groeschel and you name Andy Stanley, and then there's a bunch of other guys too. And these are all sound biblical teachers and pastors, but they're also megachurch pastors. And I think that those guys are, I don't know that I don't want to say they're given a different kind of grace that guys like me or you might be given, but it is different for them. And they've worked for that. Right. I've seen a lot of times in small town cultures where you don't get to be a hybrid. There's a peer pressure that it's like you either have to choose business and success, or ministry and some form of, if not poverty, like it's kind of like there's a cap on how much success you can have. And I know I've experienced it because I run my own separate business ministry, and you have, as long as I've known you, I've observed this in you. Josh is a very business-minded guy. Like, how do you balance out having ambition, and saying, hey, money's not a bad thing. We know money is the root of all kinds of evil. And so there's a temptation to make it an idol, but it's not a bad thing. But how do you balance out like that hybrid nature, and like having ambition, wanting to see your business succeed, but also at the same time, not letting it consume you?
Can I add one thing to that question too? The idea that, especially in like the Bible Belt where we live, it seems like lots of times you see businesses that'll just tack a cross into a T on their name because it seems like it. Right? How many logos have you seen where it was like the line on that T is a little high, like
Siri, remind me to not use the logo that I've worked with.
If any of our listeners or watchers have that logo in their business, I apologize on behalf of Josh.
I'm just doing the questions Jeremy said. I'm just kidding. But sometimes I feel like it can almost feel like you're leveraging Christianity. You can leverage Jesus. It can feel that way. Not necessarily that anybody's doing that. That may not be anybody's heart.
Right.
But you can almost feel like somebody's leveraging it in a way to like produce income and produce money. And sometimes that feels a little dirty. And like, how do you fight against that too?
Right.
The idea of ministry seeming like it's just pushing the business. Like the ministry is pushing the business, not them working together as a hybrid.
Right. So maybe two questions. I think I get what you're saying. There's like question two comes out of question one. So to restate question one, how do you manage the tensions of both?
Yeah. And the ambition, because sometimes ambition in our world, I know for me, especially as a minister, and I would put you in that category of someone who, gosh, if you're not a minister, nobody is, you know what I mean? So, ambition can be seen as a bad thing, and the drive for success in worldly, can be seen as automatically a bad thing, no matter how you use it. So how do you manage that as that hybrid?
I think that the mission of success, of course, defining well in your own, getting it in your own heart and getting your orientation, your compass set on what success is important. And I think you're very right. I mean, you're all over what is an essential piece is that we have to define that as our journey with God. Like even as a minister in the marketplace, that success is not just more money.
Mhm.
Success is not growing your business footprint. That can be a part of success. But Josh and I talk about this rather often, is that staying in your lane as a business leader is keeping your eyes on Jesus and going after him inside your business. I mean, that seems to be a bit more easily translated perhaps in ministry world. You would
Yeah.
think that keeping your eyes on Jesus and going where he's going, doing what he's doing, pursuing what he's leading you to pursue, seems to be like, well, that's that sounds very ministry model ish. But we've got to dig back into the theology of work and the fact that God gave work in the garden
Mhm.
before man fell. So we have work is a very spiritual thing. It's a very God-given, God-gifted thing. So if we recognize that it's an invitation for us to pursue a closer journey with God, or pursue the oneness with God that he is inviting us up into, then we begin to see that work is a space. Your business, your career is a space, let's say a non-church career, or a
Mhm.
ministry, 100% ministry career. It becomes a space that is holy, and it is about you becoming more holy, and is about you bringing the kingdom of God in that space, and without of course, without losing the fact that you are intended. You've got to make money, because that's a part of the essence of your business.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think we have to redefine what our mission is, what our vision is, where we're going. If where we're going is about if it's centered in walking with God, and if it's him that has given us this lane to grow in, then it begins to reshape it.
Mhm.
And money begins to be a byproduct. I mean, you're looking at your profit and loss statements. You're looking at the slices of the pie. You're looking at managing well. You're looking at refocusing, recalibrating, staying on target as a business. But really, that's everything. And that's maybe for a little bit later. Is the fact that whenever you begin to sharpen your own tools in your own game about pursuing something in business better, then you realize that same pattern just works everywhere. It works in your marriage, pursuing your mate. It works with your children, pursuing their heart. It just kind of begins to unfold with an attitude of excellence in your pursuit. And so, I think
Yeah.
that's the probably the addresses that question. I think from where I sit, or from to the point that I've grown, is that I'm after that. My eyes are on Jesus in the journey, and how I define success begins and finishes there, and that kind of that brings me to the center.
Mhm.
One of my favorite mentors, podcast leader, I don't think of his name. Become Good Soil is the name of his podcast.
Oh, yeah. You sent me one of those.
Right.
That's good. That's a
It's
really good one.
stuff. Yeah, Morgan Snyder, and he actually, one of the podcasts is where he interviews another podcast leader in the Work Life Play podcast. So really very much to the point of your question about how do you balance all of that? Your work,
Mhm.
your life, and your play, and all of that. But Morgan, he uses the phrase primarily when he's talking about marriage, and what he pursues in his journey with his wife, and their story together as a couple. and he says he continues to pray. Not the tendency might be for us on our side of the marriage, or if you want to say it like that, as the husband side or the wife side, whatever, to say, I want you to fix them. God, fix them, fix that the person that I'm married to, instead of saying, help me, help me grow. But I think that almost the best way I've ever heard it said was that he prays, bring us to the center. God, bring us to the center. And that means my wife, or my spouse, and it means me, that we are both coming to the center. So I think to your question, Jeremy, is that what brings me to the center is to come back to my eyes on Jesus, and where is he looking and where is he leading. That's how that hybrid works and works well, rather than, from 8 a.m. to 12 p.m., I'm going to focus on business.
Mm-hmm.
And for, this period, I'm going to focus on ministry, and that's how it's going to be. And I'm going to put it down in my, and some people will probably do that. That will be the way that they are brought to the center. So again, I'm not saying that, even putting it down in my day timer, that's probably pretty old language there.
Like a little one that you keep in your pocket.
Right.
Yeah.
Like pencil and paper and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't have any examples here. I would
Josh, a day timer was a little calendar.
Is that the thing that came with my grandpa's almanac? Is that what you guys are talking about?
Oh, dude, that's funny.
Right. Stone tablets. It was right after the stone tablet.
Yeah, day timer was in the Ark of the Covenant. That's good though. I think you're spot on. I mean, and that's kind of that question of like, how do you achieve balance? Your language is perfect, because so often when you talk about balance, you're thinking about two opposite ends of a scale. But when the idea is come to the center,
right,
it eradicates the idea for us that you have to be constantly battling for balance. Well, if Christ is the fulcrum, if Christ is the center point, there's no need for balance at the center.
Exactly.
That's going to be the title of the book that you and I co-author now. We'll let Josh in on this.
Yeah. Well, he can be like, the secretary that we mentioned at the end of the book.
That's it.
Josh takes some collateral damage, man. I promise you.
What a privilege.
Yeah.
Right. Biggest target takes the most shots. So yeah. Okay.
but then also too, so you'd said like that the first question leads into the second. So like what Josh said so then how, if you're at the center, okay, how can you address, even if it's been some temptation in your life, or if it's something that you've seen, I don't know. I mean, is there something to leverage in how you do that? I mean, and leverage is probably the wrong word if we're talking about the center, but it's the word we're going to use, because it's kind of what you hear. And even at Element, we talk about that all the time, man. Me and JR and Neil from Stage will say all the time, we'll leverage a coffee shop,
right,
to send money to the mission field, or we'll leverage, a building so that, Solitude Place can have a place for counseling. So can you kind of speak to leverage and how it can sometimes turn into having a cross in your logo,
Yeah. Yeah. I think you're right. I mean, leverage is not evil, to use your opportunity. I mean, even if you own a car that you purchased with your own money, but you drive yourself to church in that car, even if you do that, as a part of ministry, well, the church doesn't own the car, but you're leveraging the car for ministry, or, maybe you're taking people to church, with your car that otherwise wouldn't, because they don't have a ride. I mean, and all that, you're leveraging everything. So, I think it goes back into the attitude that Jesus is the center, like God owns everything. And that we're, that a lot of what we do and what we use, we realize that it flows from him and it goes back to him. So, and Josh and I talked about this just the other day about the Dead Sea versus the Sea of Galilee, and how, you've got the flow coming through the Sea of Galilee, therefore there's life. There's flow coming in, there's flow going out, and that's where life is. But if you go to the Dead Sea, at the kind of the bottom of the food chain there, where everything just flows in but nothing flows out, then you don't have life. So I think that's an essential attitude towards how the business flows, and that it's okay to leverage, because that's the flow out in a way. You have things flowing in, you have the gifts, you have productivity, you have good people, you have flexibility with your time, you have hopefully some healthy cash flow, things like that that's coming in, and experience. That's a big one. Whether it be making logos or whatever, you've got a little bit of experience with that. So you've already gotten from business, that's your flow in, and then your flow out might be like what I'm leveraging towards ministry, leveraging towards accomplishing a kingdom mission, and that's okay. It's it really, in a lot of ways, I think it's that coming back to the essence of work is a gift, work is a kingdom thing. Work is from heaven, but also I do think that our danger, we can fall into a pit when we try to over segment things. We try to over categorize, compartmentalize, and keep them in the box. Lewis tells us that God is the great iconoclast. He breaks out of the box all the time. So that, even as a business / ministry leader who, is very much a proponent of this type of hybrid or this type of expression, it's still difficult. There are many times where it's like a struggle to like, where, why do I just let this guy go and send him on to a mission project? Like, we have a nonprofit here that we support. It involves a lot of property, involves that property being maintained all the time. And so there's many times I have to send people to address a need that the property has that has nothing to do with business, but yet at the same time, you want to be able to support what's going on ministry. And then there's ways that you can handle that on the back end of the books if you need to, that's all legit. It's just, you've got to, sometimes you just got to let go of it even more. Like the Lord, the Holy Spirit is leading us in this way. We got to be responsive. We got to do what the Holy Spirit's doing. This is where God is working. So we're going to join him in that. So I think there's a lot of kind of adjusting as you go along, and being nimble is huge in business. Being nimble is huge, especially if you're you're allowing the strength of that cross-pollination to happen. To the point of putting the cross in the logo, and I really think that is a great example, Josh. I think it's much more about, I want to be rather to be known for. It's the question of what is the fruit versus the label on the tree. We can label, if we had an orange tree out here, we could go and label it a pear tree, but that's really kind of missing the point. It's like, well, I want it to be a pear tree, but it's not going to change the fact that it's actually an orange tree. So right. I think, what we want to do is be known as what God has made us into, what he's calling us into. And honestly, I don't know that as well as I want to know that. I don't know how to do this thing that we're talking about as well as I want to grow into, doing this thing that we're talking about, being a hybrid, having the best of both business and ministry. And what does that look like on a daily basis? So I think it's like more that we want to be known for the fruit rather than the title, when it comes to, and it's, I don't think it's incorrect to put the cross in the name. Yeah, right. But I feel like in some ways it needs to be an outflow of just who we are. And I think if I look at all of the logos that we've produced around here, I don't see any kind of direct inference to like the cross, in any of them. But well, I don't know. I guess maybe the most recent Forge logo might have something that could go. I know that's not either here nor there, but it's just like
Right.
I'm just trying to think that I think the essence of what you're after is more about I want the fruit to be right
Mm.
than it is and if we're given that good clear vision from our walk with God and our oneness with Christ, then we just naturally produce that fruit, and that's really what we're after. That's what we really want to be named for. So um, I kind of feel like that's it. It's like instead of tacking something on, it's almost like let's be that more than we market that.
Yeah.
Mm. And I think the question is really coming from a place of in business and business ministry, the way you do, and like Tom was saying, I've worked with Tom for a little over a month now, and there's days where we spend as much time in prayer as we do, on the phones trying to serve our clients.
Mm-hmm.
But that there seems to be a feel of being like I can use the gospel, I can use Christianity as a way to propel my business for like temporary and worldly gains, instead of I can use my business for eternal gains, right? Which of course we're not ramming against anybody that has a cross in their logo, just to restate that. But yeah, the idea of just being like you want to be clear that you're not trying to purely leverage the idea of Christianity for worldly gain.
Right.
One question that kind of wraps from what you're saying is like everything you're talking about, especially the idea of like the Sea of Galilee with that flow that creates life. In your life, Tom, what are some ways that like your business and Christ working through your business has like taught you personal lessons, or has give you new understanding even within like your family, within your relationships with friends, and especially even like within your ministries with CBS and a lot of young adult ministries?
Mm-hmm.
How has some of your business influenced that?
Well, there's the kind of the more superficial, the more obvious things, I guess, that on the level of flexibility. For instance, you have as a business owner, it's likely that you have more flexibility. I don't think that's always a 1-to-1 ratio. Sometimes it actually works against you, but for the most part, I think the flexibility is one thing that kind of points to that you have. If ministry is a priority, then you have the opportunity to be flexible or lean into some flexibility you wouldn't have otherwise. You're able to leverage, some things that you have with the business might be, you're able to flex over into other things. I mean, a great example would be, the fire pit, the solo stoves that we're able to say, okay, well, we use them at the business location, but we move them over to other ministry locations, and we kind of bring that presence or that strength, that opportunity, those items that you use and are totally legit for one space can be moved to another space. So you have those things don't get in the way. You actually use them. You kind of, again, this is about the nimbleness, that you're able to move around and use things for different spaces. So that's one level. Then you get another level is your pursuit of God in business. It creates, because those two seem like they are maybe mutually exclusive. like I'm I think Ray Kroc, the founder of the McDonald's,
Yeah.
Chain and all of the McDonald's movement, if you want to call it that, franchising, that he that he said, my priorities are like God, family, and work, and when I'm at home, that's the way they go. But when I go to work, then I just interchange everything, and it's work, family, God. That's or work. I can't remember, but it's something like that. But so that just to be clear, that's not a good posture. I don't think that was the right way to do it. Although he was very wildly successful in franchising, but the mission, excuse me, of staying centered in Christ and letting everything flow out of that, even in business, it sets up this a necessity to continue to seek God in everything. And I say everything, and I still by no means am I living there very well, but I realize that one of the principles I feel like we need to grasp as leaders is that we have to remain in that posture of asking, seeking, knocking. And that's where blessings are just able to flow. I think it takes you in weird directions sometimes, for us as our own heart, like, do this thing instead of this thing. Well, this seems to be the most logical, but this, see, like I can see God in it. It's a challenge to kind of move your focus over to something that you wonder, okay, I hear God leading me in this direction, but I don't really, it just doesn't, it's not the easiest thing to do, but God leads you in that direction, and you can't really connect the dots too well. Like, well, money wise, finance wise, this might not be the most advisable decision, but yet God would lead you into a direction. So, there's a place there where you just kind of keep asking and seeking and knocking. That develops, channels inside your spirit, inside the natural flow of your life, that you just ask and seek and knock, and you just keep bringing it to him in prayer. That change of your person, that development of the way that you approach problems, the way you approach questions, the way you approach white space, the way that you approach, what do I do now? The way you approach transitions. We have a lot of transitions throughout our day, whether it be driving to, or whether it be moving from one project to another, whether it be, coming back from lunch, there's a lot of transitions. Do we bring God into those transitions and those moments? Well, to your point, Josh, I think the how does that work? How do the way that I've found to grow in business is to, keep seeking, keep asking, keep knocking. And then to take that home, is to do it also with my children, to do it also with my wife, instead of like, oh, I know what this is. This is that situation. The answer is this, because, obviously this is the presenting factors. And, as men, we tend to want to, and I apologize, I'm assuming, but men typically, we tend to just want to fix things instead of asking and listen. That's just a tendency. So I think God, pulls us back into a place of saying, okay, maybe I don't know what this is. Maybe I need to ask and seek and knock in this situation with my child, or this situation with my relationship with my wife, or even this situation that's going on inside my own heart. And I think that's a really rich discipline to continue to pursue and develop. And even as I'm laying that out on the table in this conversation, I'm thinking of, well, there's this that I didn't ask God about.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm thinking of conversations I've had this week going, dang it, Tom.
Yeah, right.
Now we can't publish the podcast because someone's going to see that I was wrong and how I handled that situation. Dang it.
Yeah, I have no idea what you guys are talking about.
You will. Well,
Yeah,
I mean,
talk about awareness next. How about-
yeah. Oh, well, after we stop recording. Tom, I mean, everything you've said is on point, and it daisy chains with everything else really seamlessly. So as we finish up, I want to ask you, because you've danced around it a little bit, and I know that because we're talking about business a lot,
Right.
it's like we're talking about ministry, but we're not. But you're wearing the hat, and you mentioned how the genesis almost of your story into why you got into business was student ministry.
Right.
And I know that that's always been near and dear to your heart. You're highly integral into like the young adult community Bible study. And as long as I've known you, and even from what I know about you, student ministry, young adult ministry, but then also men's ministry has
Yeah.
been core to who you are, at least in how the Holy Spirit manifests itself in your ministry.
Right.
And I guess we'll just finish with this, because I don't want to take up too much of your time, but
Sure.
what is it about and if like a woman's watching or listening to this isn't about men's ministry, but like what's your goal in men's ministry? Because I talked to Josh and how you run your business, and I'm like, his business sounds like a Forge meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I'm like, and they're selling guardrail material and buying and all that stuff. But every time I talk to Josh or one of the other guys that I know who works for you, it's always like, dang, I need to put in an application. You know what I mean? Because it sounds like a Forge meeting, except they're making money. And so I don't know, like, how is it that you visualize ministry in general? Because you're like, everything you do seems like I love when I'm preaching and I see you in the auditorium, I go, this is fantastic. Because like Tom, like okay, not everybody else, but a lot of times people come to church and it's a consumer mindset.
Right.
And even for most, it might be participatory in the sense that like, I'm here to do something, I'm here to be part of something. But you come to church and everything you do, in my purview of you, is like, not only are you participating, but you are a part of what I'm doing on stage when I'm teaching. I hope that makes sense to you, because if anybody's been around you, like you're very active in affirming guys, men and women. And so I don't know, how do you see yourself in ministry? Because we've talked about business a lot, but like when you're at a Forge meeting, or you're talking to a young guy who works for you, or whatever else it is, what's going through your mind as far as, okay, Tom Calton, the minister?
Right. That's a great question. And of course, this is, constantly being refined.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I think that's a high value, Jeremy, is the fact that we need to understand as people who walk with God, that we can always add value. And there's a phrase that is around business mantras. It's probably in 100,000 business mission statements that we can always add value, but we need to keep that in front of ourselves. We need to keep reminding ourselves that we can always add value. I think the areas that the enemy just pounds us is that we think we don't have much to offer. We think that we don't have what it takes. We think that we don't have anything to bring to the table. Now, Jeremy, because, he gets up there and speaks, and it's an amazing delivery, and it's theologically just like a feast. And, I see you in there, and I think, well, now he's got something I don't have. I could never have that, blah, 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 blah. We just kind of depreciate our own value way too much. I look at Josh and, his strengths and just, flies so high and fast in his ability to connect with people, and just to be around him, just so magnetic and energetic and all of that. So we fall into, I think it's easy, one of the enemy's plays that he runs against us very often is that, just kind of the devaluing of what we bring or who we are. So to realize that as we walk with God, he's always got us in some situation. We're I guess you could say it is like we have either left a situation where we could have been adding value, where we were adding value. We're in a situation where we should be or can be adding value, or we're going into a situation where we'll have an opportunity to add value. All of that is true. We're always in a place where we can add value into someone's life. Now that might be just listening. It might be just, dialing in on a person and be very present with them, maybe praying for them while while we're in conversation. It could be, so just the attitude that we've got to get down into the marrow of our bones, that we can always add value into another's life. And that just grows exponentially. Like of course, it's on the individual one-on-one basis. And then if I can metabolize that and begin to realize that I can add that into a group, and then I can add that into a culture and an atmosphere around me, a business culture, for instance, a church culture, for instance, you're not, and as I kind of self-analyze my own life, I realize for much of the time I am very often checked out on that, that I'm like, and then I'll just kind of, what am I doing? I'm just sitting there, spacing, or, even just take church, for example, when you're in the pews, like, well, the pastor's speaking. So I sit and, just kind of, I take this posture of just kind of, observing, but really, to your point, you can even receive as a receiver that this is a point where I'm adding value, and you can even listen well in those moments, and that's adding value to you and to the those whom you're observing or receiving from. And so I think that's a lot of where we can build our understanding that we have a lot to bring to the table. We have, each one of us individually, we have something unique that we can bring to the table. And if I grasp that and I begin to work on and building that, then I'll find that I actually have more than I thought. It's that principle of like Jesus saying, if you're faithful in a little, you'll be faithful in much. The parables of the minas, like he gave a little to begin with. And then those who got it, those who apprehended the principle of, I've been given a little, I'm going to do the best I can with this 2 minas or whatever it is. And then he's like, oh, to the ones who got it and brought back double, he's like, great, you got it. You passed the test. Now you get 10 cities. It's this magnification effect. So I think if we apprehend the truth that we can always add value into people's lives around us, we can always be enriching, and it will change our place in the story. And then it even changes, when you're self-feeding, to whether it be, listening to sermons or listening to the podcast like we had talked about, those things add so much value to you. And then what happens is you enrich your own soil, and then God gives you an opportunity to enrich others because of your letting yourself be enriched. It's exponential. Continues to grow, and you continue to get more opportunity. But I think the key question is, what are you doing with what you have?
Well, I think that's the perfect way to kind of encapsulate even just this entire conversation, is like, because you saying you can always add value in ministry, right, is really the same thing, same attitude you bring into business, same you bring into your marriage and your parenting and your friendships, and also recognizing that all those other people, they can add value too, and so, and I think, like, we keep talking about going to the center. I think part of going to the center, if I'm hearing you right, is recognizing I can add value. The Lord has gifted me in certain areas. I'm not going to shy away from those, but I am going to guard my heart against abusing those or making my gifting, or the fact that myself or Josh or Tom add value, making that the goal. Instead, saying, Lord Jesus, this is all for you. So you tell me if I've gone too far. You tell me if I'm focusing too much on my business, because I want to make money, because I want to enrich my family and my community, and give to, give to the Lord. But at the same time, like, Lord, I'm listening to you. So you correct me when I've gone too far. And so, yeah, man, I'm hearing that from you. And I know, you've made a big impact, on a lot of guys in your relatively short time at Element. You're one of those guys that, like, you know, if somebody asked me how long Tom and Evelina have been at Element, I'd say, oh, man, it feels like a long time. You know, but you're such a blessing. And and so you're just know, I mean, and we will have to definitely do another one, because I know firsthand there's a million topics that Tom Calton could talk about. And so, but you know, to anybody who's listening or watching, if you're part of Element or in our community, whenever all this COVID stuff's done, make sure to take Tom out for a cup of coffee, because he's somebody that you want to soak in what he has to say. But Tom, we really, we really appreciate. Yeah, exactly. I know I'm empty too, so I'm gonna go fill back up. I got a million yard work things to do today. I'm sure you do too. Josh, I know you have yard work to do.
Oh my
shoot.
But hey, man, so it's such an honor for Josh and I to get a little bit of your time. And I hope you enjoyed it, and we'll definitely have to do it again.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to this platform. It's been a lot of fun, and it's helped kick off a lot of things more. I know that I need to put down and kind of work on myself too. So.
Oh, dude, this is gonna be the most productive day I've had all week. This has fired me up.
Dude, I got all these notes where I'm just like, if I think of a question, I'll write that down, and then like Tom's just dropping hard facts, and I'm like hybrid first generation vitality.
That's good.
It's awesome.
That is good. Yeah. Well, hey, man, we'll talk soon.
Okay, love you guys.
Thanks, man.